This is the Ring of Honor, a.k.a. Shane T, boy, the baddest champion you ever seen, boy.
This is Mr. Anderson.
This is good old JR Jim Ross, and you are listening.
You're listening to Knockouts and Three Counts.
Cover! We got a Super World Champion!
That might be one of the craziest knockouts I've ever seen in my life.
Knockouts and Three Counts is the podcast, baby! It's the real deal, baby!
Knockouts and Three Counts starts now.
Ooh, what up, though? It is another Thursday. It is Knockouts and Three Counts, and it happens to be opening day of baseball. Let's go, Tigers. They need to beat the fucking Dodgers. That's all I'm saying. But with that being said, this is another episode of Knockouts and Three Counts, and we have a debut episode for you tonight. We have our guy, Anthony King Kong Coleman, coming through. We appreciate you, my man. Thanks for coming through.
Yo, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
No problem, my man. Yeah, definitely been one that we've talked about for a little while. We got a few things to get on the plate with that. We're going to talk about some WrestleMania 41 because it's almost time for me to go to Las Vegas.
Lucky you. Lucky you.
I bet his bank account ain't saying that.
I was just about to say, fuck you and looking at my bank account and then talk to me about lucky my ass because all that money came out of my pocket. Now, that being said, anybody that wants to sponsor this fine show, I will gladly promote your product. And if you want to help the Kyle go to WrestleMania fund, especially
send me to WrestleMania,
right, especially with the way that these tickets are this year, son of a bitch.
dude.
I could definitely use some love this year. But either way, I'm looking forward to getting down to Vegas. Shout out to past guests of the show, Chris Kale. We're gonna link up with him down there. You got Wale Mania's going down there. You got Fourth Rope is going on down there. There's all kinds of shit going on there. And hey, Vegas has got to be warmer weather than what I've been getting here in Michigan. So see, it all adds up. It's all good. Now I got to figure out what I'm doing for WrestleMania, but still, regardless, the weather will be better. Anthony, dude, what's good in your world, dude? Appreciate you coming through.
Oh, nothing, man. You know the drill. I'm just working, training, wrestling, fighting when I can, taking care of my son, enjoying life, man. You know how it goes.
Beating people up at the hospital.
That wasn't me. It wasn't me.
I didn't say that wasn't me.
It wasn't me. When I walk in the hospital, people are on their best behavior. You've been a witness to that.
As Shaggy says, wasn't me.
Hell yeah, man. Well, like I said, and like you guys can see in the description for this episode, we're going to be talking some pro wrestling. We're going to be talking about some combat sports. So I guess that's as good a place to any to start is talk to me a little bit about your background as far as pro wrestling and combat sports. How'd you get involved? What made you want to step to the other side of that?
Okay, so everything started when I was around like 5 or 6 years old. I was outside playing, and while my father was in the house, he had just got off of like a 16-hour shift. And I got into a fight outside with some kids, and one of them hit me in the head with a Heineken bottle.
Damn.
And I still got the scar right here from it.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was one of the kids hit me in the head with a Heineken bottle, and like, if I remember correctly, my father was like, "Man, just get your ass in the house, sit on the couch and watch TV." And now while I'm sitting there bleeding, he's like patching me up. But as that's going on, I'm watching on TV this big ghoulish white dude with purple and black on that looks like something that's straight out of the death scene or something, taking his hat off. I'm like, I said, "Dad, what's this?" Like, after he done patching me up or whatever, I'm like, "Dad, what's this?" His exact words was, "Shut up and watch it. Don't say nothing else." I'm like, "Okay, cool." I sat there for 2.5 hours. Little did I know that was going to be one of my favorite wrestlers, The Undertaker. So it goes off.
Undertaker
and
was
I
the
say,
first
Dad,
one I saw too.
yeah. So it goes off, and I say, Dad, I said, how can I watch this again? He said, go in that back. He points to a back room in his apartment at the time, and he says, go in that back room and grab a tape from out of there. Now he had this room full of room full of tapes. I didn't know what was on them at the time, but the room was full, like high, ceiling high, full of tapes. So I grabbed one, and I just popped one in the VCR. And yes, I said VCR because people don't use those no more.
Hey, I still got VHS tapes. All right.
Yeah, so I popped the tape in, and here we go with more wrestling. I'm like, okay, cool. And I started watching it. But then after the wrestling went off on that tape, some boxing came on, and it was one of the very first boxing matches I ever watched. It was George Foreman. I just don't remember who he boxed. All I know is he knocked the guy out with I know, right? Rest in peace to that man.
Yeah.
He knocked the guy out with a walking uppercut, walking towards him. I just don't remember who it was. But after that went off, then what I knew as cage fighting, because at the time it wasn't called MMA, what I knew as cage fighting was on there. So I'm like, dang, all of this is okay, cool. I'm like that. So I watched that whole tape. I put it to you like this. I didn't go out the house for 2 days. I didn't go out the house for 2 days. All I did was watch those tapes, man. I would grab a tape and pop another one in, eat, and then grab some more food while I'm sitting there eating it or sitting there watching the tapes. And that's how it started. So you get King Kong Coleman from my father. My father is the one who did all of this.
Yeah, I feel like most people have like one of those kind of origin stories. Mine was like that too. Happened to be the Undertaker as well. I seen him was at the babysitter's house at the time, and their kids were a little older than me. Had Undertaker on the TV, and I was scared shitless because I didn't know what the hell this dude was. He was huge, had a black overcoat on. All the lights went out. Had the scary ass music, and he was big as shit and beat the shit out of people. So. Like I said, Undertaker was one of the first ones for me, and ironically, I still have some of those VHSs, like you said. Shout out to Detroit's own Rhino. I still have the copy of WrestleMania 18 he gave me on VHS when I was like 11. I have SummerSlam 98, which was one of the first pay-per-views I remember. I had that one. That was when Triple H and The Rock had the ladder match. Yeah. And then Austin and Taker were in the main event.
That was the yellow ladder. You know how much I hated the yellow ladder?
Yes.
I don't know why.
And that was when ICP had the performance at Madison Square Garden with the oddities. Yep. Yes, dude. Yes.
What a time, dude. What a
time to be alive, dude. If you say you didn't enjoy that shit, you're a damn lie. Right. And then as far as the boxing stuff, I'm with you. My grandpa watching Tyson fights and stuff like that. And then MMA is something I didn't find till later. So, I mean, like I said, everybody that kind of came up in our generation, I feel like it was kind of the same old story with how you found pro wrestling and stuff like that. Kids today don't know how big of a deal it was to have VHS, man.
I got it easy, damn it.
I know, man. You just go look on the app. Oh, I go on the app. I can find any pay-per-view I want. I remember going.
As soon as he brought up the wall of movies and stuff like that, I that's the first thing that popped in my mind. Is like, man, there isn't many places like that no more. Like people's houses and shit that are like, unless you're like old school and got it. You're either one or two ways. You're either a hoarder and have way too much shit, or you are fancy and have like a nice decorative collection of like fancy old like Kyle was saying with his established like VHS from Rhino or something like that. It's
Corey
one of two ways.
Oh,
if you still got that shit on the wall,
There's you'll see it. There's shit on Facebook like groups that have man caves, and there is actually I seen one, and this guy has wrestling. Like his man cave is set up like a mini Blockbuster video section. And it's all old school wrestling tapes.
Dude, I feel like that would be so dope. I mean, even though
we need to find out where that house is at.
Yeah,
right. Facts. Like, I mean, even though Right. Even though you can watch it like on Peacock and stuff, there was just something about going to the Blockbusters and the different video stores just to see what different tapes they had and shit.
Looking
Because
through,
on a Friday or Saturday night,
making that
definitely.
selection.
yes, bro. And you get you a little bit of
What's-
candy or something, get you 2 or 3 of them bitches
Candy,
and rent it.
popcorn. Yep.
Yes, bro.
Walking the aisles.
I had a problem
knowing-
where I'd go
knowing-
check out the wrestling tapes and like there'd always be the one missing. I'm like, oh yeah, I have that one, don't I? That's at the house. I actually still have that. Damn it.
Oh, so you the person that used to keep all the tapes?
Yeah, and then my
And
my dad
so
would
you was
find
the
out what's
reason
his
why we
late
couldn't
fee?
find
What's
the
his
tapes.
late fee for? I'm like, yeah, it's in my room.
You watch them 4 or 5 times in the 3 days that you had it, like watching all the back when you had you'd get the tapes that some of them would have like the special features on them and shit.
Dude.
So you'd see like the backstage stuff.
Dope,
Man, them were the days, kids.
I miss the video games. I wasn't so much on the wrestling tapes at that point. I was on the video games, man. And I remember just that drive of like you get one game and you get it for 4 days if you're lucky. And it's like, all right.
You got to have time to play it because we were in school at the time.
Legit question. Do they make these places? Do they still have like?
No, they got rid of all the Blockbusters and shit.
There used to be a family video at the end of my road, and it closed like almost 10 years ago now. So yeah.
Yeah, see, we had Best Video over where I live now. And you would get 2 movies for $1.50. I think that was when I was, 2 movies.
There was
a
Corey. There was a cheap.
That's what's up.
There was a cheap spot over by us too, though, because like in the same place, like how you're saying the family video. There's a spot on. It used to be right on Party and Goddard. It's where the laundromat's at now, but that used to be a movie store.
Yeah.
I remember I found it when I first moved in over here in Taylor, dude, and it was like a little hole in the wall spot. But I liked it because it was a hole in the wall spot. It had like a bunch of old tapes that you didn't find in like some of them, and then like I used to like when we were younger, you know, you'd go up north. And because obviously it's a different story, you're like, oh shit, let me see if they got anything in here that they don't got at home. But the same thing with PlayStation 2 games and the whole deal. But
it's gonna come back, dude. Give it 20 years.
I mean, look, I still have a whole thing like one of them, like the plastic Rubbermaid totes that's got like all kinds of I got the DVDs and fucking. I still got PlayStation 2 games and PlayStation games and
keep sitting on those because it's gonna come back just like vinyl record, just like cassette tapes. It's all gonna.
Hey, I heard there's a thing now. I just saw an article for a thing that said that the Nintendo 64, which man, the amount of time that I spent playing WCW and WO Revenge in the No Mercy games, and I heard that they got a remake to where all the Nintendo games are gonna come back out in 4K and shit. So you're telling me I can play fucking GoldenEye in 4K? Anyone that's our age that said they didn't play them.
Stadium.
Come on,
bro.
Let's get it.
What about Mario Tennis and the whole all the shit and Mario Kart? Let's not forget Mario Kart. But speaking
Mario
of games and
legendary,
hell yeah. Speaking of games and
legendary.
Transitioning and all those kind of things, bro. How did talk to me about how did you go from watching the tapes and running the tapes and all that to deciding that wrestling and fighting was something that you wanted to do yourself?
Okay, so I started off actually playing football. I did that first when I was 6. And I remember asking my father, my father and my mother, I said, I want to wrestle. Now, what I didn't know at the time was the wrestling that they put me in was like freestyle and folk style and stuff like that. So my very first wrestling practice was at Ferndale High School in the basement for the youth in it wasn't called My Way then, it was called AAU.
Mm-hmm.
So I go in and the coach, shout out to him, John Olsen. That's still one of my favorite people on earth right now. Shout out to Coach John Olsen. That was my very first wrestling coach. He goes, show me what you got. And I just haul off and punch the guy dead in his chest, hard as I could. And he looked at me directly in my face. He said, no, that's not what we do here. He said, you got a lot to learn. I said, okay, I got you. But In the midst of that, I started watching wrestling even more, but then I started watching like freestyle, folk style, and Greco-Roman too. I said, I want to do both. Getting older, I'm like, okay, I want to do both. But then I started getting into boxing. I'm like, okay. And the main person I used to watch as a kid was Tyson. I used to watch Tyson and I used to watch Ali. And I would just imagine myself punching, kicking, and throwing people around just like how I would see the wrestlers do, but hitting them with the speed and the power of how Tyson and Ali were. So I'm like, I want to do that together. So I started wrestling. My wrestling career at the beginning was not good at all. Like it took me a while to learn the techniques and things. I say when I got to like maybe 11, I started to catch on to it more. And then I had my younger cousins also who I used to practice on. Like to this day, I either get made fun of by my relatives for putting people in the sharpshooter or the cradle, like the wrestler's cradle. Like I just catch one from anywhere, just like I would catch the sharpshooter from anywhere. Like I would just scoop somebody and throw them in it real quick. Even in my neighborhood, I still get teased about it, like to this day. And that happened when I was 11. So let's fast forward to when I turned 13. I'm like, okay, I asked my mother and my father, I said, can I do kickboxing? They say, yeah. They said, but you got to find a spot that does it. So the recreation center across from the house that I grew up in, that I currently own now, had a kickboxing program. I started there. And I just started putting everything together. I just, I would horseplay with my cousins and stuff, but then I would start going in the garage or going in the backyard and just shadow boxing and kicking and moving. And then I would have like cinder blocks back there that I would pick up and throw around just cause. So that's what mainly started me wanting to just experiment with everything. Then right after I graduated high school, with the extensive wrestling career that I have, I didn't want to stop wrestling. I tried to go to college. I wanted to go to college at Oakland University. But the year that I was supposed to actually go there, but what ended up happening was something happened with the group of people that was already there where a person lied about who they were on the mat and they shut the whole wrestling program down. So I really didn't have nothing to do after that. So I would periodically go up to the high schools and things like that and roll around with the guys that were getting ready to graduate. And then jiu-jitsu gets introduced to me at 17. The very first place where I took up jiu-jitsu was the Academy of Sudo Tai with Isaiah Gathings. Shout out to him. He was one of my first jiu-jitsu instructors. But the problem then was I didn't really take jiu-jitsu too seriously, but I knew for a fact I wanted to fight. And the thing that made me want to fight so much was I remember telling a teacher, I think I was in second grade at the time. She asked, they go around and they ask you what you want to be when you grow up. And at the time, I already knew. I said I either wanted to be the WWF champ, because that's what it was called at the time, a boxing champ, or a cage fighting champ. And in her exact words, she told me to find something more realistic to do. And I never forget, I looked at her and I told her, I said, you watch me, one day I'm going to do exactly what I said I'm going to do. So I was destined, like in my head, I knew I was going to do it. Anything that I will always say I'm going to do or I want to do, I'm going to do it, unless it's physically impossible for me to do it. Fast forward, I become a decent amateur. I have 2 belts, and then I end up fighting for Donna Frio's heavyweight belt in 2015, which happens to be the same year that this teacher in particular was retiring. So I said, okay, I fought a guy named David Radcliffe. I'll never forget. And this was my second time fighting him. The first time I fought him, I stopped him in the first round, but then he went on like a 3-fight win streak, and Donna Frio was like, hey, our heavyweight belt is vacant. I want to put you guys in there again against each other. I'm like, wow, I already beat him. I said, give me somebody else. He's like, if you're scared of the guy, just say that. I'm like, dude, I whooped this guy in 2 minutes. What am I scared of? The fight ends up happening because this dude starts bad mouthing my son, because at the time my son had just been born, and he was saying things like, yeah, your son gonna have Down syndrome and stuff like that. Now at the time, I was probably in some of the best shape of my life. I was 230 pounds. I was training everywhere. Like everywhere in Michigan that had a gym at that time, I was training there. But I didn't have a set gym. I took the fight regardless of whether I had a set gym or not. And my cousin and my brother, my cousin Jonathan Martin, I'm sure you've bumped into him several times. Shout out to him. And my brother, Adam Hunter, he's a brown belt, Joe Maware brown belt. Should be a black belt by the end of this year, hopefully. Shout out to him too. They decided that they were going to corner me, and I said, this is a title fight. I want to hurry up and get this done, because like all I wanted to do at the time was get home to my son. Because like I said, my son was 2 months old, and that's all I cared about. Then the main reason I took the fight was because this guy ran his mouth about him. So long story short, the fight starts. We're at Joe Louis Arena. This also was the last fight that happened at Joe Louis Arena. The last MMA fight that ever happened at Joe Louis Arena. The fight starts. He tries to trade with me. I crack him with a left hand, take him down, and I think I choked him out. Yeah, I choked him out. If you look through my Facebook page, you'll see the picture where I have him in a choke and he's screaming with his tongue hanging out his mouth. That was one of my highlight pictures. I really like that. You should have
framed
That's
that
why
one somewhere and get that one framed.
I know I should have, right? But I ended up winning that. And the main thing that I wanted to do after I did that, like I said, was get home to my son. But I knew that next day I was going to try to find this teacher that told me, hey, find something more realistic to do. So I went back to my school where she was teaching, and I asked, I said, hey, is Miss Langer still teaching? Is she still here? He said, yeah, she's retiring this year. And I told them who I was. What's crazy is the secretary was still there, but the principal was different. The same secretary from when I was a little kid was still there. She was finishing up also. I ended up, taking a picture with her. So I walked in there with 3 belts. I knocked on the door, and the kids at the door was like, whoa, who is that? He got WWE belts. I'm like, no, dude, that's not what this is. I remember the little kid. I said, no, dude, that's not what this is. And she looked at me and was like, how can I help you? And I said, hi, Miss Langer. My name is Anthony Coleman. I was in your class years ago. She said, I'm sorry, what was your name? I said, Anthony Coleman. I said, remember when you told me years ago to find something more realistic to do? When I told you I wanted to be the WWF champ, or boxing champ, or a cage fighting champ? After I said cage fighting champ, her mouth dropped. She was like, I said, yeah, I just wanted you to show you that I found something more realistic to do. And that's what I said I was going to do. And I set all 3 of my belts on her desk. And she just looked at me and was like, wow. So, and doing all that, it just felt good to kind of like throw that in her face. But I did it in a humbling way, because I also gave her tickets to my next fight, which she came to. Her and her husband came to the fight. I went up to her afterwards, hugged her and whatnot. But it was just like, that was one of the things that mainly motivated me to say, hey, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. I have to do this. I need to do this. And that's just where it started.
Sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes that's what it takes, man.
I can relate, dude. I mean, that was the same thing with CP. They told my mom I needed to go to the special ed school and all that stuff, and how, I wasn't going to be able to read, write, all those things I fought since I was 13 myself. So I can totally relate with that. Well, how'd you find your way into the world of pro wrestling, man?
Originally just watching it and wanting to do it, but the very first independent show that I went to, because I had already went to a bunch of WWE shows, the very first WWE show I went to was the show that Tommy Hearns was at when him and Bret Hart got into it. I think that was like 97, like mid 97 or what was it, like early 97? No, that was early 97. And when Tommy Hearns got into it with like the whole Hart Foundation, that's when I was like, wow, I really want to, do this. And my uncle, God rest his soul, he was the one to take me there. That was my mom's uncle, would be my great uncle. But me actually getting into wrestling, a good friend of mine named the Soul Taker, that's what you guys know him as, the Soul Taker.
Yeah.
Invited me to a XICW show. And I said, this is crazy. And I'm sitting front row and I'm like, wow. But the show was real long and I had my son with me and I didn't want him to I had to take him home because it was around his bedtime. So we stayed for like the first half of the show. And he asked me did I enjoy myself. I said, hell yeah. I'm like, yeah, I did, of course. So then I asked him, I said, how could I get trained? Who trains people? It took a while. It took a long while, but I finally ended up getting trained at the House of Truth. Shout out to Truth Martini and shout out to Bubba McKenzie.
My guy.
A.T. Hook. And also he had Sean Tyler in there as well. He was a big part of our training. Shout out to all those guys. So that's who trained me. To this day, I still tell Bubba he should manage me because he's the only guy that, as far as in the MMA world, that knows me both from an MMA standpoint and a pro wrestling standpoint. That's your Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar moment right there, if you ask me. Bubba needs to go ahead and manage me. Bubba, I hope you're watching.
Oh, he saw the promo for it. I just saw him at the Sanctuary the week before, man.
Bubba is cool people, man. Shout out to
the Bumpin' Uglies were some of the first ones that rocked with us. Shout out to him. Shout out to Movado.
Yes, sir.
Definitely looking forward to that. Well, now that we've gotten into some MMA, we've gotten into some pro wrestling stuff. Obviously, like I said, more of what I see of you these days ends up being in the fighting sense of things.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about, as we've gotten into 2025, what does King Kong Coleman's hit list look like?
Hit list, you say? You know what? The way that I see it, with the group that I'm with now, I'm over at Stars and Strikes right now. Shout out to James Benatal. He's welcomed me with open arms. I've known James my entire MMA career. But before him, I was training with Master Dimitri Paul and Zachary Holston. Shout out to those guys, because if it wasn't for those guys, I wouldn't be as profound and elevated as where I am now. It's just some things out of our control. I'll just say that there were some things out of our control where I had to go to train elsewhere. But like I said, I personally knew James during my entire MMA career. So it's just like moving from one house to another. And James and those guys over there welcome me with open arms, and we just trying to get the ball rolling. I do have one fight up under him. I ended up making my pro kickboxing debut with James as my coach, where I ended up winning by a second round KO. And the guy that I ended up fighting was supposedly a Golden Gloves guy. He was 21-0 with USA Boxing or something like that. But second round I knocked him out. So shout out to James for everything he did for me, especially for that fight. And shout out to what we keep doing. We're just in the lab, just putting stuff together and waiting on the next opportunity, which hopefully should be soon.
I like it. Well, with that said, what about on the wrestling end? Everybody always puts out these lists of matches they want to do. Is there anybody on the wrestling scene you're looking at getting into?
Honestly, the only person that I have not wrestled yet that I want, because I have these dream matches, but dude, I had some bangers with Shogun, Suplex Shogun. Shout out to him.
Past guest of the show.
Yeah, dude. I've wrestled.
I've been
Soul
drinking
Taker
a lot
few
more
times,
lemonade
actually.
these days.
Me and you both. Yeah. Man, I think now, I would like to have a match eventually where Dan Severn is a part of the match, because he was also a guy. He briefly trained me in wrestling also, and he was also briefly one of my MMA coaches. I would like to have a match where either he's involved somehow. He doesn't obviously have to be in the match, but he has to be involved somehow, because him and Ken Shamrock were guys that I looked at. I was like, hey, these guys are both doing MMA and wrestling at the same time. Why can't I? And being, I've had the opportunity to have conversations with both of them about it and just ask advice on it and things of that nature. And both of them were always just so humble and just telling me that, hey, take care of your body. Ken was the first one to tell me, like, hey, I've gotten hurt more wrestling than I did with MMA. I can agree with that, because, like I said, I've been coming up on 2 years in, and I've had more injuries in pro wrestling than I've had in MMA. And I've been in MMA competing since I was 17, 18 years old. I'm 34 now. So, yeah.
Shout out to Ken Shamrock. I hear there's a rumor he might be going into the Hall of Fame this year. I definitely think
it needs to happen.
Too.
It needs to happen. I don't understand why it hasn't happened. I mean,
yeah. Politics, man.
Between what he did in the ring, there was a time where he might have been champion, and then you look at him being the referee between Austin and Bret Hart in the submission match, and so many different things.
Hey, one thing that sticks out to me about Shamrock is when The Rock smoked him in the head with the steel chair.
Dude, and they just
the
craziest
swung that
bitch like a
baseball bat, bro.
Ding!
You couldn't hit me with a chair like that.
No hands, man.
Just took it. Just had all of it. Didn't move. Didn't nothing. Didn't tense up.
Usually not something you'd be proud of, but
I just took my first chair shot recently last Thursday. That wasn't nice.
Yeah,
wasn't nice at all.
Go figure. Getting smashed in the head by a metal chair.
You take it on the head or the back or where?
The back.
Yeah. I'm good on that.
The head chair shot, I don't know about all that. I don't know about all that.
Gotta protect ourselves nowadays, man.
Yeah, that part.
On to that.
He said, "No more CTE for me."
No.
Another thing that I know you said you wanted to get into, and it's something that we've talked about a little bit here. We just had Dustin Page. Shout out to him, big dub in his fight last week for Bare Knuckle FC. Same with Yuli Diaz with his big dub for Dirty Boxing. You talked about mental health and the way that affects not only what you're doing with wrestling but fighting. I can again relate with that. Is that something I think more people deal with than will be admitted? With that being said, talk to me about that in the sense of dealing with that while also navigating the waters of pro wrestling and MMA.
Man, honestly, the best way to put it is like you just have to know that everything is not always peaches and roses, as they say. You have to, like, for me, example, I'm gonna just put my whole thing out there. I take care of my son. I'm a full-time father. I take care of my father also, because my father has some ailments to where he has to be taken care of. And then not only that, working full-time at a psych hospital, and then trying to find time to train, which I have to do. Whether it's for pro wrestling or MMA or jiu-jitsu or any of that, like, just a lot of it can be a burden on you. And then, it comes to a point where you almost break down. And it's like, You don't want anybody to see you break down because of all the people that depend on you. But you look and you analyze the situation, and it's like, who can you depend on? And there's been times where, dude, I have been done training, had a great training session, but like I'll get in the car and I just feel like shit. And then I'll just sit there and I end up crying because I'm just like, wow, I'm going through all of this. I just hope the people that I'm doing this for are proud of me and actually care. Whether it's parents, kids, friends, brothers, sisters, girlfriends, wives, because I don't want to get too much into it when I say this, but there's always somebody preying on your downfall, unfortunately. And it sucks. It's a harsh reality, but it sucks. That's why, I'm thankful for the people who do support me nonstop. People like, my girlfriend, my father, my son. Like my son will tell you, my dad is this, my dad is that. I remember when I first got my purple belt, and it was still during COVID time, and they were doing distance learning. I think that's what you call it, or electronic learning. When they were doing the stuff through the tablets. For show and tell, my son Jacob grabbed my purple belt and hung it around his neck and was like, Miss Wallace, this is what I'm showing for show and tell, And she was like, Jacob, what is that, a karate belt? Jacob got offended because Jacob is well versed in jiu-jitsu and kickboxing also. He's been doing it since he was 4. He's 9 now. He got offended and was like, no, this is a jiu-jitsu belt. It's not no karate belt. Don't call it that. He's like, my dad worked hard for this yesterday after he broke his leg. And like he went off, and I'm just sitting next to him dying laughing. So it's moments like that I'm like, okay, that's why I keep pushing. It's moments like that to where, the main thing that irks me at times is that my father, as much as I know that he supports me and he's the reason why I'm even doing all of this stuff, because he introduced me to it. Before during the Wild West days of the MMA, when stuff wasn't sanctioned, I would say I had about 75 amateur fights. My father only came to 1. Out of my professional fights that I've had 14. My father has only come to 1. But the main thing that he turned me on to, which was the pro wrestling, I've had 92 matches. And yes, I keep track of all my matches. My father has never come to any of my matches because he didn't think that I really was going to do this. So that messes with me a lot. But I just know like I said, there are people who appreciate my efforts and appreciate what I'm doing. And that's what keeps me going, whether it's a text message from like my girlfriend say, hey, I'm proud of you, keep doing what you're doing. Whether it's my son just even though he can be a pain sometimes, he'll just look at me and say, Dad, I love you, appreciate it, thank you. All right, talk to you later. I see you when you get home from work, stuff like that, That's what keeps me going. So another thing I want to touch on, because I know I'm like talking a lot, but another thing I want to touch on is just like, men's mental health hasn't been pushed as much up until now, because people are like, okay, maybe men do go through stuff, but most of the time we were told to just shut up and take it on the chin. Nobody cares. Shit like that, that's not the case. So it's just like, hey, as quote unquote soft as it sounds, we got feelings too. You know what I mean?
I totally respect it. I go to therapy myself, dude, and I think a lot of America would be in a better spot, if more of that stuff was addressed. And like when something bothers somebody, stop being looked at like, oh, you're really upset about this, that, or the other. You don't know how that stuff affects somebody. You don't know what that triggers and the different things that people have experienced in their walks in their life. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason why different things trigger different people different ways. So I definitely like that. At least in 2025, I feel like we're starting to get to a place where more of that is at least more accepted than it was back in the day when we were kids and things of that nature. So definitely respect that. Definitely something that I'm in the process of trying to explore a little bit more myself. But we have talked about mental health. We've talked about fighting. We've talked about pro wrestling. Let's talk about some of the stuff that we've got on the bigger and grand scheme of those things, being that we're getting into, and not only getting into, we're already in wrestling season, or pro wrestling. I meant to say WrestleMania season.
Yes, sir.
And like I mentioned, I'm getting ready to go to Vegas here. I'm looking forward to seeing where we end up with that. But we haven't gotten to talk about it much on the show. J-Bone, as we get through the road to WrestleMania here, bro, you got to tell me, how are we feeling on these John Cena promos that we've seen, and how are you feeling about the build to WrestleMania 41?
Dude, John Cena, this is like the heel turn we didn't know we needed. We need this shit. This is absolute cinema and medicine for wrestling fans. This is the best story since the Bloodline. It is absolutely amazing what he's doing. He is touching buttons that we didn't know we had, and he's doing it in almost a good guy way. He's making you the bad guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we're
that
the
first
heels.
promo, bro.
He's
the way
not
that
wrong.
He made that whole crowd shut up
He
for
is
a minute
not
and
wrong,
stop
dude.
and think, like, damn, he's not wrong.
He is not wrong, because even at his top-notch Make-A-Wish Foundation, everything he's done for everybody with a smile on his face. What do we do when he comes out? John Cena sucks. It's not cool to like the good guy.
That's because he does.
It's not cool to like the good guy, right? It's like now that he's a bad guy, I do want him to switch his gear though. I need some like different.
I also dig though the reason why he said he's not going to though.
I get it,
like
but,
I
like,
fuck with it.
I
would like to see
because y'all want me to. That's crazy.
Yeah,
but
I just want to see like the old, the old
and
baseball
his
jersey
explanation for not changing the song. Why would I change a song that's got my voice on it that I did and all that stuff? Because you guys don't want me to do it again. As much as
shit.
Exactly. As much as I would like to see,
is, like, even through the years of like good guy John Cena, and I've never really been a fan of him. I've never cared that much. I was never a John Cena guy, but a bad guy John Cena guy,
and I was never a Shawn Michaels guy either. So
I'm a dick Shawn Michaels, but the John Cena thing, I just never cared for the guy. You know what I mean? It ain't my cup of tea. But now that he's a bad guy, like I want to see some bad guy shit. You know what I mean? So
I would argue that what we're seeing so far, the way he cooked that little kid in Brussels where they were at, Jesus, that poor kid is gonna be like scarred for life. Like he pointed him out.
He did a video about it.
I bet he did.
Yeah, the little kid did. The little kid did a video about it.
That's great.
Listen here, John Cena. Fuck you, bro. And then shout out to past guests of the
He's
show.
He's going to become a fucking wrestler now.
Well, bro, did you see the kid that they brought on Busted Open the other day? Shout out to past guests of the show, Dave LaGreca and Gio the podcaster. So there's this kid, Gio the podcaster. So he's, I don't know what he has health-wise, but he's had to have over like 30 surgeries and shit. Was one of the Make-A-Wish kids for John Cena and everything. And then when he turned heel, he records this video of him throwing the spinner belt in the trash. And then they brought him on Busted Open. And he's like, man, I was one of the biggest ones defending the spinner belt and all that stuff. And he's like, for him to turn around and go heel like that and treat us all like that, he's like, man, I hope Cody beats the shit out of him.
I hated the spinner belt, dude.
They say he might bring it back if he wins.
Yeah. And
it's
because he knows we all hate it. That's why.
Now here's the question: What if he does, baby?
Yeah, right.
Bro. Not only that, think about this. He's only got to get one more championship to beat Ric Flair's reign. So what happens?
Let's stop there real quick. let's be honest. Ric Flair got way more rings than 17, but we're not gonna.
No, I get
16,
you.
We're not gonna.
I get you, but for general purposes, if he wins this other one, they're saying it breaks the record. What if they do what else has been thrown around? What if he just wins the title and says "fuck you," and then says "I'm the last champion and taking it with me"? Because remember, he said in the promo, "I'm winning and taking this with me." So what if he beats Cody and just says "fuck you"? I'm out.
I can't live with that, dude. Sting.
That sounds real Brock Lesnar-ish.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that if they do that, he would eventually somehow get drugged back into it, and Cody had beat him. But I'm just saying, you want to talk about getting some heat? If he was to go in there and somehow beat Cody at WrestleMania, and especially if The Rock was involved somehow, and then he just says, "Fuck you, I got the belt."
Yeah, that would be some real good heel shit.
You want some heel shit, man. They open up Raw and he comes on the video and says, "Fuck you guys, I got what I came for. I'm out."
So do you think that like this is gonna be the way it ends for him though? Like he's not gonna finish as a heel, right?
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he eventually gets turned back, but I mean, again, the fact that it's taken this long to see it, I'm cool with it. Let that shit run out. Bro, he said he's going to be here the whole rest of the year. I'm with it. Let that shit run out. For anybody that's watching the stream right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you guys have got any thoughts on the heel turn,
I just can't imagine
John
going
Cena.
like what's the big pay-per-view in December? I don't remember what it is, but
Elimination? No, that's not Elimination Chamber.
Chamber is right before Mania.
I don't. Damn, what is?
I can't think of it off the top of my head either.
Me neither. Because I know it's Survivor Series, then it's whatever that is.
Survivor Series is there, and then I think they said they're bringing back one of the old ones. But what do you guys think?
Oh, is it?
No, Hell in a Cell's in October.
Okay.
Anthony, I mean, what are your thoughts on this build-up for WrestleMania 41?
It's been mid. Like it could be better. That's the best way to put it.
I can't argue that, dude. I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways, it's like there's some things that are really hot, like what they're doing with the Cena and Cody thing. That's dope. I do think that some of the heat on the whole Jey Uso Gunther thing has kind of cooled down a little bit, and I'm interested. So I'm interested to see how they play it out. But another thing that's intriguing to me is the whole thing with Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, and Io Sky. How that actually is going to play out once we get to WrestleMania.
I think it's going to end up being a triple threat somehow.
Yeah,
I really think it's going to end up being a triple threat. Like whatever match. Who is it?
Io, Rhea, and Bianca.
Rhea, they're getting their match Monday. I really think it's going to be a triple threat. I think it's going to end up being a triple threat because, like, the way I'm playing it out in my head, they're going to have their match, and then Bianca's going to be ringside watching. Somebody going to get thrown into Bianca, and then it's going to create all hell. And then
I think they wouldn't all be involved if we weren't getting a triple threat.
Yeah, like we definitely get the triple threat.
Yeah, I think that one's going to be better than expected.
Now, when it gets made official, is up in the air.
Well, they got to still get through this title match, but I definitely expect
that's on Monday, right? The title match.
Yeah. I definitely expect there to be some fuckery in that match if I had to guess. But with that said, the one that's surprising me that just doesn't seem to have the hype on it that I thought it would is Tiffany Stratton versus Charlotte, bro.
Yeah,
like leave that one alone because we know what's gonna happen, but we know what should happen. That's the best way to put it, in my opinion. We know what's gonna happen. But
look, man, I'm a fan of Tiffany Stratton, but I honestly, if we're being honest and we're talking about like what we're seeing on TV from week to week, we're talking promos, we're talking what like the presence that somebody brings when they come to the ring. We're talking about what somebody can do in the ring. There's levels to this, bro, and I feel like this is just showing why Charlotte, regardless of what anyone wants to say or bitch about or complain about or say that she was pushed to, Charlotte is here, and there's a lot of other people in the WWE that are below that. Like, I feel like this story is really showing where she's at
feel like
and
Tiffany
where
is
like
below her.
I don't think that Tiffany has matured enough as a talent yet to be on the same level as a Charlotte. Where like in the other match, like we talked about with Bianca and Rhea, both of them, they're solidified stars. You put either one of them, like they were talking about, maybe it would be Bianca and Charlotte, or Rhea and Charlotte again, or whatever the case might have been. Those are all marquee matchups. Like, I think Tiffany is the star on the rise, but I feel like this story has kind of shown like where she sits with where Charlotte's at. And that's not a shot to say that I don't think that Tiffany can't be that big star, because obviously like the crowds have been, hot for her too. And we talked about it with WWE Hall of Famer Greg Gagne about it on the show, who trained her. I think she has all the talent in the world, but I'm just saying I feel like that this story has kind of showed like while Tiffany is on her way up, I feel like Charlotte is still here.
Well, she also got a short end of the stick because you're fucking with the GOAT there. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? You can't get much higher than that. So it's like, it's going to be visible on how
you're not wrong. Plus, I mean, I don't know how much there is to be said for it, but when you think about it, like when you think about like the top blonde girl in WWE, she's automatically going to be compared to Charlotte anyways. And so now you're putting them against each other. It's like a direct like apples to apples almost. Where like if it was like a contrast in like personalities or styles or whatever, I feel like some of that kind of like hides some of that.
One of those apples is plastic though, and we ain't talking about Tiffany Stratton.
He's not wrong though. He's not wrong though. One of those apples I'd rather than the other. Let's just say
he said one of them apples is plastic. Holy shit.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Come on,
but
okay, thank you. I just wanted to make
you're
sure.
You're not wrong. But one match that's definitely got me. Although I'm surprised it's the way they went, especially with how much they harped on the fact that Punk said that he wanted, a main event was something he wanted when he came back to WWE. The idea of him versus Rollins versus Roman Reigns, dude. Especially for those that really know the backstory of shit about when the Shield came in originally. CM Punk is the one who brought in the Shield. So for Roman Reigns and Seth, 2/3 of the Shield to be fighting CM Punk at a WrestleMania like that, dude, like the three of them on the mic, I mean, I feel like so far it's been pretty badass. I feel like this match will by far be one of the best ones of both nights, in my opinion.
I agree, but only the thing I don't agree with you on is I feel like CM Punk got them both of them beat easily on the mic.
I won't argue that.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Seth be cutting into people. Roman's getting a lot better, has gotten a lot better. This tribal chief era Roman Reigns is a different animal.
Yeah.
But CM Punk has always been the GOAT on the mic.
Always.
Oh yeah. I do
want to see at some point. I want to see Punk versus Paul Heyman on the mic, some way, shape, or form. Which I don't think.
Don't forget. But I gotta get that favor out of him.
But the only thing that's going to keep us from thinking that Paul's going to turn on somebody there on Roman at one point is for Paul to kind of stand up and say, "Hey." You know what I mean? Like go face to face one night on Raw. You know what I mean? Just on the mic for one time.
Well, I feel like in a way,
I don't think he's gonna turn.
Different. You don't think he will?
I don't think he's gonna turn, and I'm gonna tell you why I don't think he's gonna turn on anybody. I think what the favor is getting Punk some type of world title shot, and it's gonna have to happen after WrestleMania. Because if you notice, Punk never said when he has to cash the favor in.
Right.
I feel like
they're planting seeds though, because you notice he said on Monday he was like,
it was mentioned.
Yeah, he was like, "Thank you for delivering me the tribal chief, and maybe the wise man isn't only your wise man."
Yeah. Mind games, bro. You gotta fuck with mind games.
Well, I see a lot of rumors circulating now that people think that he's gonna screw them both and join Seth Rollins.
Wow, that would be interesting.
What would be sweet, even though I know we're not gonna get it, is if he screw all three of them and we get about 37 German suplexes from a returning Brock Lesnar. That's what would be sweet.
That would be dope, actually. I'd be down with that, dude.
I mean, if you want to be technical about it, that's the original Paul Heyman guy.
Right. I'd be
just
cool
saying.
with that. I don't know what Brock's legal troubles are now, but I'd be cool with that.
See, here's the thing: from what I've been told and what I've read, his name was brought up in the lawsuit as not more so as a person that's being sued, but more so just as a
being involved,
being involved / bystander / person of interest, but not charged with anything type deal. Like, I'm usually good with stuff like that because of my background, but I'm like, I don't. But it makes no sense to me, especially if like I'm by no means saying that like Vince is innocent, but if he like I'm lost. Like I'm lost on the whole lawsuit thing, especially when it comes to Brock. You know, because like if Vince is the one that committed the crime, what was Brock? And
the problem is they're saying that as part of the lawsuit is that like Vince was offering this chick up as like I don't know how else to put it, but offering this chick up as like a favor or a gift, or at least that's how they were trying to like word it out to Brock Lesnar to get him to sign.
Oh, okay.
But and then from what I'm hearing is Brock missed his flight and never dealt with the woman. From all the because I did my digging on this case, dude, because I'm like, I just found it weird. I'm not, like I said, I'm not taking Vince's side, but like Vince created this whole company and y'all took the whole company from him. Like he has no ties to it anymore at all, which I still don't believe.
Oh, dude, he still had shares in the company.
Yeah.
No, but hear me out. Hear me out. Who was you? Just hear me out on this. I'm fantasy booking, but this may be some real life shit I'm about to say. So Vince gets booted, whatever, right? The Rock comes in. Who has always been one of Vince's closest people?
Corporate Rock.
No, Rock in general. Let's shoot here. Rock in general has always been like this with Vince, okay? Like this. Now, who's to say The Rock doesn't have Vince in his ear making all the shots, calling all the shots? Like, you're not about to tell me that Vince just gave up all of his control and shit. He probably did just for these people to say, okay, he's not around no more. But somebody got Vince in the earpiece, like, all right, Vince, what you think of that? Vince, what you think of that? That's just me. Yeah. That's what I think. I feel like he's still in some type of control. Because from what I heard, he was still a majority shareholder of the company. You can't force him to sell his shares, I don't think.
They can't force him, but he also doesn't need to, like, I don't think he's on the board anymore, so he doesn't have a lot of say in what some of that stuff happens. But to your point, I mean, we've talked about it on the show. I don't think he ever is going to be like fully has no like ties to it anymore, but I don't think it's in a place where like he's making decisions anymore. But even if that wasn't the case, I mean, you still have Triple H, who's his son-in-law, in control, right. And then you got the
You don't think they're talking about that shit over dinner?
Right. You know what I mean? Man. Like, he'll always be involved to some degree, but I think TKO just kind of wanted to, just get out of that.
Out the picture.
I think, because, I mean, remember, I was covering the Royal Rumble like the day when all that stuff kind of like broke. Mm-hmm. And so I think at this point, it's just more like a damage control thing, and they can't have, like him associated as a figurehead anymore, at least from where I sit. But speaking of UFC and speaking of WWE and the merger and all that stuff with them, we also have some things to talk about on the UFC side of things. Does anybody have, Corey, you've been quiet for a while playing with pussy over there. With that being said, what are our thoughts on this UFC boxing deal that Dana White's got out? Because if these are the payouts that we're talking about, that shit is not gonna overtake the other boxing promoters. That's for certain.
I think it's Dana White's attempt at trying to control something that he will never be able to control. As far as I'm concerned, he an idiot too. Well, I mean,
it all depends, because if he's linked up with Turkey, he might not want to spend the money, but we all know Turkey will spend the money.
Yes, they will. But come on, man. Like, you got Al Heyman, you got Floyd, you like all these different promoters.
Yeah, but clearly
like,
Turkey got fuck you money though.
I mean,
I think
facts they do. But
I think the big thing we're gonna see, not to interrupt or jump in or anything, but I think the big thing we're gonna see is there's gonna be a big difference between they're gonna put on like star level cards where they have those top level talent, the guys that that you care to tune in for, and then they're gonna do like a typical fight night type of deal where they try to build some of these guys that are, C-level stars in boxing right now that aren't making checks, but they are damn good boxers at the same time. There's a lot of those out there, and I think if boxing can do one thing from the UFC model, we can start to get more entertaining fights. Records don't matter necessarily to the same ilk. If as long as you're putting on a very entertaining fight, it doesn't matter if you maybe lost 2 out of your last 5. You can still be fighting for a championship, because guess what?
Joshua.
Because guess what? That you matter to us and the fans because you put on. Doesn't matter if you necessarily lost against X, Y, or Z. That's where I think boxing could really improve. Other than that, to your guys' point, I don't think there's any chance that they're gonna be pulling a bunch of these top level stars, the Crawfords, the Canelos, the guys that people are buying pay-per-views for right now. That's not what the market's about. Like I was saying,
if the money they're talking about paying somebody, if like it's all got to be organizational, at least based upon like what they say that pay scale is. Fucking Canelo's not coming over there. Why the fuck would he?
That's what I'm saying.
You know how much money Canelo made in his last fight?
A shit ton.
They'll do off cards though that don't necessarily, or like I say, they'll do the events where, like this one that they're talking about doing in Times Square. Like that's a pretty crazy thing to have. Like I forget who all is fighting on it. It's Ryan Garcia, Crawford, I think, and somebody. Yeah, and to have all 3 of those guys fighting in a public venue like that, where he's not even charging tickets and stuff. I mean, obviously, there's a like the ball is rolling in that direction of the fact that we can put on huge events. It doesn't matter necessarily paying these guys and stuff like that. Like I say, I think the whole league format and the whole TKO boxing, UFC boxing type of thing, whatever we're calling it nowadays, I think what really ultimately it will end up being is, like I say, a bunch of these C-tier currently stars that will be the next generation's A-tier stars because of what this organization will end up doing for these guys. Where I feel like, you could be fighting in the third fight from the top on one of those giant pay-per-views, and the chances of people caring it's give or take. It's usually less so that people actually care about that fight. So that being said, if UFC can do, or TKO or whatever can really generate the interest like I think they will, I think it'll be a healthy thing ultimately for boxing.
I hope so. I definitely think it could be based on how it looks, but it all just kind of depends on how it is. The interesting thing out of it is, like, for the first time in all my years of being around MMA and around it, there's been a lot of talk about Dana White possibly leaving the UFC because of all the shit that he's got, that he's got on his plate. Now, do I see that happening in my lifetime? I don't know, but I mean, at a certain point, everybody's got to get burned out. And so we'll have to see where that lies for Dana White. But speaking of getting burned out, another subject that I know that you had a lot to say on, because we have a couple last things to touch on before we get out of here. Shout out if you're watching on bodyslam.net, millions.co, or on any of our socials, Knockouts and 3 Counts. Make sure you're checking it out. KO3C.com. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. But Jon Jones versus Aspinall. Are these motherfuckers going to fight And
No.
wow, okay.
Okay,
I
you ready?
personally,
You ready for the heel turn now?
Ain't a
Or
heel
no,
turn. I already know where this is going.
Let's go.
You ready for the heel turn now?
We all know you don't
No.
like Jon Jones. Bring it.
Saying I don't like Jon Jones is an understatement. I'm like, I just want to know, and I want all of y'all to tell me. Everybody's just watching. Anybody to tell me, how do we celebrate a guy who beats the shit out of his wife? Let me finish. Beats the shit out of his wife, gets high on cocaine and other drugs, and blatantly cheats, whether it's poking a person in the eye or taking steroids, and has no type of consequence for his actions. Like, this dude literally got into an accident and caused a woman to have a miscarriage because he dropped his cocaine in the car while he was speeding. That sounds like manslaughter to me. Number one. Number two, we still celebrate him, but we got War Machine in jail for life for beating the shit out of a porn star. No offense. I mean, work is work, but War Machine is in jail for beating the shit out of a porn star, but Jon Jones not in jail for beating the shit out of his pregnant wife or hitting the lady that in the car that was pregnant and causing her to lose her baby. I don't get it. But we still parade and get this guy a thumbs up and, oh, he's the greatest fighter of all time. That's bullshit. And you can tell anybody I said that I said it. He's not. He's a scum of the earth. There's a couple people who I would say that are better than him. Some of them are dead. Some of them, they say, killed other people, but they really didn't. But we're not going to go there. But like the fact that people put him here when he belongs underneath the bottom of somebody's feet is terrible. I don't get it.
All right. So
I don't get it.
I'll say this. Go ahead, Corey.
Well, I was just gonna say, from the man aspect, there's no arguing it, right? Like your points are spot on. I mean, if we're going from strictly the man aspect and what he brings to necessarily the table in that regard, yeah, there's not much arguing it. If we're strictly looking at it from sport aspect of what he's been able to achieve, I agree. I agree with the finger pokes. I agree with all that shit. I do. I think that's such a cheeseball move. That being said, for him to maintain the reign of dominance that he did over 205 for that many years is still impressive. And whenever he makes his walk to the octagon, it's going to be impressive for that point. But I completely agree with what you're saying on who the man is. You know what I mean? Until proven otherwise. I mean, also feel that way. But it for me, I've grown up in an era where there's been plenty of sports idols, I guess we'll call them, that aren't necessarily idols when, giving a magnifying glass on them, right? And I feel like Jon Jones is a perfect, explanation of somebody like that. Like, he's done good in his life, but he's also done far worse in many occasions and gotten away with it too, like you're saying. So
when the good outweighs the bad, you cannot be considered good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, when the bad outweighs the good, you cannot be considered good. I said that wrong.
I think Daniel Cormier put it best, though, because when you think of a champion, you can't. It's hard to think of a guy like Jon Jones. Is he great in the octagon? Of course, but with all the stuff that come with it, the drugs, the steroids, the questionable, the stuff, the car, everything, like, he's not a champion. He's not what we consider a champion. He's not somebody to look up to. That's the hard part. You know what I mean? So
we've seen it on so many people's lists, and I think it's a big thing that boils into that list of why people put like GSP and stuff like that and so many other people above him. They put him above him, even though maybe the record isn't as flawless. Maybe it's, maybe we've seen him knocked out in the ring. Maybe we've seen him lose his belt, but we've seen what he's been able to go through, endure, what his skills have been on, display and stuff. And we know for at least a pretty well fact that he hasn't cheated throughout his career, or at least definitely not to the degree. And then also, like you say, the man himself has been nothing but like
carries himself as a champion.
Top tier. Yeah, top tier. So that's where I think we would see a lot of, it'd be kind of hard to argue a true GOAT argument if it wasn't for all of those asterisks. And I think that's where those asterisks weigh a lot heavier for certain people than they do for others.
I do think they play favoritism for him though, because anybody else gone a long time ago.
They ain't moving a card from a whole different state for another guy. What do you mean? Right. They ain't doing that. Like the week of the fight, they ain't doing that.
Right. I mean, BKFC basically did that for Lorenzo Hunt to be able to fight.
I mean,
they had to do that in a whole ass different country.
Did you guys catch? Did you guys catch the Logan Paul podcast with Aspinall on it recently when he was talking about Jon Jones?
I almost gave it a watch, but I did not. I thought about it.
Logan Paul, I mean, he straight up asked him, he said, is Jon Jones scared to fight you? And he said, yeah. He said, it's clear. He's like, he's scared to fight Ngannou for all these years. He's scared to fight me right now. He's scared. That's what Aspinall said.
I think it's less of a like true scared. I think it's a like conservation of his record. And if you want to call that scared, I completely understand where
you're scared. You're scared of losing. You don't want to lose.
That is scared, sir.
Yeah.
No, I that's why I could say you can completely interpret that as scared, but I think that's what it ultimately is it's like, yes, I know what I've done to get to this point. You're gonna have to throw me a bag because I know that this fight is far more 50-50.
That's what I was gonna say. So like
I've been dealing with
for me, and this is coming from somebody who's fought as well. I definitely can see the scared or the ducking or what. I think at this point, I think Jon Jones is trying to play all the cards that he's got. Because to your point, I also think he realizes full well that's why he straight up asked for "fuck you" money, because he knows that this kid is by far going to be the toughest test that he's got, number one. And I agree with a lot of the other people. Like shout out to our boy Ryan McKinnell and Andreas Hale. I think regardless of how this fight goes, I don't think that we really are going to see Jon Jones fight again after that. I think win or lose, this is going to be the end of it for him. If that fight happens. And I think I want this fight to happen for Tom Aspinall's sake, in the sense that if it doesn't happen, I mean, like Jon Jones is, I mean, even though he's only had the 2 fights at heavyweight, realistically, like if that fight doesn't happen, Tom Aspinall's already cleared out the rest of the heavyweight division. And if Jon Jones doesn't fight him, then it pretty much is going to kill off the rest of the heavyweight division. I think that fight needs to happen. I think Jon Jones knows how big of a risk it is. I don't think even he would say at this point that he doesn't know how big of a risk it is. I think right now, to be honest, I think he's just trying to set himself up for the biggest payday. Now, as far as where he goes on the GOAT level, I've talked about this on the show before. In terms of for skill, guy's great. There's not any way to really argue that, at least for like skills and what he's able to do in the octagon. I don't think anybody really would argue that skill wise he's up there. But again, to Anthony's point, when you factor all the other stuff in, man, it's always going to taint his legacy. It's always going to kind of put that dark cloud over it, even if over time those things kind of blow over, I guess, in a sense. I mean, I think it's always going to be something that is a cloud over the career of Jon Jones, I think. But I mean, at this point, realistically, it's the fight that has to happen. I mean, it's the biggest fight that the UFC can put together. I think it only further kind of illustrates a bigger problem that we've talked about on the show before, in that once Jon Jones goes away, once Conor McGregor's completely gone from combat sports, like
that's another bum.
I mean, call it what you will, but as far as people that if you put them on a marquee right now, as far as people that the UFC has on their roster, you and I both know that casual fans and hardcores are going to watch it just to see what happens. What I'm saying is that once these guys go away, like a Jon Jones, Conor McGregor, when that happened with the Ronda Rousey thing and all those things in between, there's a bunch of other ones that you can name. I think this further kind of illustrates the lack of stars that they got, because in the meantime, the UFC hasn't really built up Tom Aspinall like that. And Tom Aspinall is going to be what's going to be left over after all this stuff. The same as, like I said with Conor, we even heard Ilya Taporia say something about wanting to fight him. That right there highlights the bigger problem for me that I see in MMA is just like the lack of stars that there are as far as overall star power, not just in the UFC, but in MMA as a whole. I mean, realistically, I think that's why they were trying to kind of like push the narrative for that Pereira versus Jon Jones fight, because they thought it would be more visually appealing. But now that Pereira lost to Ankalaev like that, that one's kind of out of the way again, only further kind of pushing what I'm saying, in that I feel like that's the fight that has to happen. Another fight that's getting ready to happen, that's already booked, that I think is going to be a very interesting fight, and I feel like is a crossroads fight, and it's the last fight we'll talk about on this show since we're running short on time. Shout out to past guest of the show, Austin Bashy. He's been out there with him in camp this whole fight. You got Diego Lopes is going to be fighting Volkanovski. I feel like that's going to be a banger of a fucking fight.
Definitely.
It's really going to show what Diego Lopes is capable of doing, and it's going to show what level Volk is still at. If Volk can beat Diego Lopes, Volk is still probably one of the best at 145. If Diego Lopes can beat Volk, it puts Diego Lopes on that echelon of like the top guys at 145. And if Ilya Taporia is going to go to 155, I'm all for that. I don't know how I feel about the new nickname. I would have kept it El Matador, but I think it's a little early. Well, that was his nickname, was El Matador, but now he changed it to the Legend, pretty much in Spanish, El Legende or whatever the fuck. I was listening to them talk about it on MMA today. I think it's a little early for him to be calling himself a legend. While he had a good run with what he was doing at 145. I don't know. Legend's a little much. We'll see if he can do that. If he can do what he was doing at 145, if he fights Islam Makhachev, okay, we can call him legend. But I think
he's got to get through that first, though.
I would. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's a big.
I mean, that's a tough mountain. That's a real big
if.
Yeah, big. Really.
Talking about the division though that he left behind. I mean, for Volk, this is like you say. This is a big moment in the career of whether or not you're going to continue to be that guy or you're going to be the guy that was in the division. And then for Diego Lopes, this is one of those moments where it's like he's done such a like gigantic uprise since his first fight in the UFC, right? Like he put on that real performance that put him on everybody's kind of market and kind of really knew let all the fans know what he was about and stuff. Brought it super close with Moisev or whatever, however you pronounce his name. But that being said, it was a super good fight. We've seen him do nothing but rattle off wins to get to now this point where he's now fighting for the belt. And to me, it's such a opposite directions of where they're at in their career. And for me, it feels like Volk can't lose this and Diego can. It feels like Diego still has years.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I say I feel like it's a crossroads fight. Like Volk has to win this in order for him to stay up in like title contention. And if Diego Lopes, this is just another fight for him against, the top of the division. I think with how young he is, I definitely don't think it'll be his last shot there. But I think that Volk has to win this fight, or you start looking at, okay, is it really worth it for him to keep fighting? Because realistically, hell, it pains me to say it, being an Aldo guy and a Holloway guy, but fuck, you beat them both.
Mm-hmm. Like, and if you can't beat him, then Diego Lopes being him. If you can't beat him, then what is your chances against the other top contenders at 145 when, you know, this guy's, you know, it, for me, it really is just a dichotomy of like where they're both at in their careers. And for me, I feel like, you know, we talk about it all the time on the show, momentum being such a huge thing. I feel like that's going to play huge for Diego Lopes. He doesn't know how to lose right now. He's at that stage right now, where Volk, I feel like he's taken some time. We're at least going to see a different version of him, you know, whether that's older, whether that's healthier, whether that's whatever the case be. Could be the same guy that we seen during that title run. It could be a different version. I think there's so much on the line for Volk. I feel like for Diego, there's a lot less. That being said, I feel like Volkanovski is the more skilled fighter out of the two, but I feel like Diego Lopes has that like
momentum, like I talk about all the time.
Well, not even momentum. He has that like fast twitch muscle fiber. You know what I mean? He's quick. He's strong. He's like, when he gets people in motions, when he gets people backing up, he's able to land big shots, then take them down, hit them with submissions. He's a very well-rounded fighter, but I still don't feel like he's at the skill level that Volkanovski is. But it's really such a 50-50 fight for me to see what Volk comes to this fight, in what stage, how well prepared is he still that guy. I lean towards Volkanovski. If I was, you know, a betting man, that's where probably my money would be going. But I don't know, man. It's one of those fights where I truly like, I don't know. You know?
Interesting, dude. I'm at least happy about the fact that we've got big fights that are coming. Speaking of big fights that are coming, make sure you tune in this Tuesday. We will have the return of our guy Mando El Toro Gutierrez before he steps into the PFL tournament, as he just announced that he signed with PFL and will be fighting in the round 1 tournament on April 11th. We'll be talking to him about that this Tuesday. Anthony, bro, we appreciate you coming through. We'll definitely have to run one of these again. If you got anything else you want to throw out at the people, the floor is yours, man. Where they can find you and all that.
Hey, man, my Facebook is Anthony Coleman Jr. My Instagram is King Kong Coleman. That's usually where I post all my fight information, wrestling information. And hey, I just thank you guys for even having me. I appreciate you for the support and the years of friendship, man. 100%.
Appreciate the time, man.
You really weren't a Shawn Michaels guy, huh?
Bret Hart all day. If you heard the story that I told, why do you think I always put people in the sharpshooter?
Yeah. No, I was a Bret Hart guy too. I just didn't not like Shawn Michaels.
You know,
since you put it that way, though. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Okay, well, I put it to you like this: I never liked Shawn Michaels. I still don't, but I put it to you like this: I'm sure all of us here have gotten in trouble for telling somebody to suck it.
Oh yeah,
or doing the DX cross chop. That's the best. I mean, that's the best way to put it.
You're not wrong. Another episode. I mean, look, bro, it still is transcending in 2025, but you're not wrong. Looking forward to seeing this happen this Tuesday. We will be back. Like we said, Mando Gutierrez will be joining the show. Anthony Coleman will be making his way back to a wrestling ring or a cage near you soon. And if you guys are in the area, Astronomicon, you know, Bret Hart is going to be here at Astronomicon this weekend.
I'm aware.
Make sure you guys come check that out. I will be credentialed. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. A little birdie told me that there might be some cool interviews coming your way. Hell, I might even get to ask Angry Grandma, who does she like in her wrestling? Is it Norman Reigns? You have to find out. Hit that motherfucking subscribe button. Norman Reigns is coming. Hit the button. Peace.
All right.